We're continuing our conversations this morning, and we're doing this with the 49th President of the Law Society of Kenya. Nelson Havi is in the hot seat. Good morning.
Good morning, Do.
How are you doing, Wakili?
I'm okay by local standards.
By local standards? Should they have been global?
Should have been better.
It would have been better. All right. Thank you for being here this morning. Many things we're looking into, of course. And before we get into it, Dennis is going to welcome you with today's proverb.
Yeah, today we are in Sao Tome and Principe, a country whose population is 241,790. That's according to the 2025 estimates, and a country whose economy relies heavily on agriculture, tourism, and foreign aid. Cocoa is the main export. So if you are a lover of chocolate, perhaps you've just had cocoa from Sao Tome and Principe. But the proverb today: soft water on hard stone hits until it pierces. Soft water on hard stone hits until it pierces. How would you interpret that?
Determination, however little, however meek it is, if continuous, will yield results.
Well said. They call it short and sweet.
Continuous. Indeed. Well, Nelson, among the things that we'll discuss today, let's start off with the first one. That just a little over a month ago, Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyoo, at the invitation of politician Bobby Wine in Uganda, went for an event, essentially to launch his presidential bid. After the event, eyewitness accounts then reported that these two gentlemen were then carried away by armed men. It was not clear which security agency they belonged to, whether it was police, whether it was army, whatever it was. It was just that they were people in military, or rather in a security uniform, that took them away, and they were armed. And so the questions were that, okay, would they turn up in a Kampala court somewhere? Would they be found on the Busia border, like we saw with others who were dumped along the Tanzania-Kenya border? Would we hear that there would be some communique between Kampala and Nairobi in terms of, we have your people, answer 1, 2, 3? But if anything, it was met with deafening silence. We don't know where Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyoo are. What we have heard is that the High Court in Uganda first gave an order that these two men should be brought before court, dead or alive. We then later heard the military said they have no idea, neither had they heard anything from lock-up charges or any stations that these two gentlemen were being held by anybody. We then further to that heard that the High Court had then issued an order declining to compel anybody to give information about where they were. And so, again, everybody's wondering, what's happening here? So some things have been said on the Kampala side, but then we also hear a deafening silence from Nairobi, where the CS, Prime Cabinet Secretary, and the CS for Foreign Affairs has said nothing about this. And Kenyans are asking, where are these two men? And under what circumstances did they go to Uganda, and did that warrant their disappearance? Wakili, what's happening?
Now, the information that we have is that on the 1st of October, Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyoo exited and entered Uganda. This is documented because we've seen the exit stamp from Kenya on their passport and the entry stamp in Uganda in their passports. So there can be no denying these two individuals are in Uganda, dead or alive. But credible information we have is that they are alive because they were seized and taken by the Ugandan military intelligence. They were at Kaliro district in eastern Uganda in broad daylight, taken by armed men. One of their colleagues, Kofi Atinda, managed to escape and was able to see what happened. Intelligence also indicates that these two, Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyoo, are being held in a non-gazetted facility called Mbuya in Kampala. That far is much known. Now, the judge rightfully, upon being given this information on the affidavit of Kofi Atinda, directed the government of the Republic of Uganda to produce this two in court. Now, on the return date, the Republic of Uganda indicated that it doesn't know the whereabouts of these two and that it has checked in all gazetted facilities and cannot trace the two. Of course, we know what Mbuya is. Mbuya is that detention facility where General Muhoozi, the CDF of Uganda, always prides on Twitter every day that he's torturing people. Everybody knows that is the place. Now, the helplessness that we now see on the part of the government of the Republic of Kenya is the most disturbing part. Because East Africans, Bob Njagi, Nicholas Oyoo, have an integrated East African passport. It permits them to travel all over East Africa as if they were traveling in Kenya. They have the right of access and entry. But we're saying this. We are a region governed by a rule of law. If, for whatever reason, these two are suspected to have committed a crime, then they ought to be arraigned in a court of law in Uganda so that we know what crime, if at all, they have committed and what charges they are facing. So we must communicate our displeasure to the government of the Republic of Kenya for failure to effectuate the provisions of Article 104 of the East African Community, which guarantees safe access, entry, and exit by all citizens of the East African Community. There appear to be a trinity of dictatorship that is emerging in the East African region between Uganda, Tanzania, and Kenya. There was a time where you could run to Uganda for refuge. Raila Amolo Odinga exited through Uganda. He was given a ticket from Uganda by a Ugandan lawyer because it was a safe passage. Yoweri Kaguta Museveni operated from Kenya because it was a safe haven. The government of Julius Kambarage Nyerere took it upon itself to go to Uganda and topple Idi Amin to restore democratic order. But just going back, we must understand the environment within which the Ugandan government operates. It's no different from the environment that prevailed during the reign of dictator Idi Amin. However much civilian cloth Yoweri Museveni may want to portray, he's worse off a dictator than Idi Amin. Because you remember Benito Kiwanuka was seized, the Chief Justice of Uganda, was seized from the High Court in broad daylight, everybody seeing, with a registration plate of the Peugeot that came in and took him away, being noted. You understand? And why was he seized, detained, tortured, killed, and disappeared? Because he'd issued an order of habeas corpus for the release of a certain Briton, I think it must have been Daniel Stewart, who he found not to have committed any offense and released. So with that background, we are now able to understand why this judge chickened. This judge just didn't want to be disappeared the way Kiwanuka was disappeared.
And that's why he would give an order that would seek not to compel anyone to give information.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And he comes up with a very ridiculous conclusion that you cannot squeeze water out of stone. I mean, that is turning logic over its head. It's ridiculous. But you see, this is Uganda. These are people who have refused to be liberated. The last time they were liberated, actually twice, Nyerere liberated them. Okay? We liberated them because we domiciled Yoweri Kaguta Museveni here. So that is their problem. But you see, notwithstanding that being their problem, the Republic of Uganda must understand that it is a signatory to the East African Treaty. So it must release these two individuals to Kenya. And you know, they have done this before. They detained Kungu Karumba, disappeared him. We have never known his whereabouts today. They detained Esther Chesire. We've never known about her whereabouts to date. In the recent past, they detained Alamine Kimathi on trumped-up charges. When his lawyer Mbugo went to Uganda to secure his release, they also detained him. This is the egregious manner of the dictatorship of Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. We've said we will respect the sovereignty of Uganda, but Uganda is bound by international law. It must release these two individuals. And Kenya, on its part, must guarantee the safety of its people. Because if it can't guarantee the safety of its people, it has no business being the government of the people.
Wakili, we look at what is happening in Uganda. You also look at the President William Ruto being the chairperson of the East Africa Community. And one would have hoped that that alone would have seen the President speak on what is happening with regard to Bob Njagi and Oyoo. But you look at the foreign ministry that is just dead silent. Nothing is happening. But we read these together with other. If you remember Miguna when he was being bundled out of the country, and how the Canadian government spoke about their citizen. We're talking about Miguna. You remember other instances where other countries have fought. Israeli government has fought for its citizens to come back home from Palestine. It's a debate on how that is happening, but they want their citizens back home. One would have hoped that the Ugandan ambassador to Kenya would have been summoned to give an explanation with regard to the whereabouts of the Kenyan citizens. How do you read that? Why is it that the ministry is quiet? Why is the Kenya government quiet?
Bob Njagi is one of the Kitengela three. They were seized, detained, and held incommunicado for a period of 31 days. It took us the extent of demanding their appearance in court of the then acting Inspector General of National Police, Gilbert Masengeli. And it's on the morning that Masengeli presented himself in court that these three were dumped somewhere. And there is no doubt they'd been seized, detained, and held by the government of the Republic of Kenya. When I appeared before Justice Lawrence Mugambi, I made a confession to him. I told him, Judge, even as I argue for the release of these three, I cannot remember their names, neither do I know who they are. So they are so insignificant a threat to the national security that it cannot be understood why they are being abducted. You understand? But with that background, we're able to perceive the reluctance on the part of President William Samoei Ruto, on the part of Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi, to take action, because this is what they did to Bob Njagi here in Kenya. Yeah, but we are saying, look, we, the people of Kenya, are the sovereign. You are on office because of a decision made by the people of Kenya, giving you delegate power to represent them. And this delegate power entails, amongst others, that as you sit as chair of the East African Community, which is not your personal seat, is a seat given to you by the people of Kenya, you need to protect the people of Kenya. So President William Samoei Ruto must of necessity do the right thing, however uncomfortable it is to him.
And it would appear as though, Nelson, that they do know what they're supposed to do, because yesterday the Standard published a story about individuals and was able to name 5 of them who, apart from the one who then came back from the front lines of the Russian war in Ukraine, that had found themselves fighting as soldiers in the war, having thought that they were going to do a different job. MOFA has come out very clearly to say that they have acknowledged the revelations, saying it is working with Russian authorities to trace citizens who were lured into the war front and enable them reach Kenya's mission in Moscow for help to travel back home. This is the same thing, more or less, that you can have a conversation with your diplomatic colleague and say, hello, this is what's happening. Either give us an explanation or return the fellas and let's try them here for whatever the case may be, depending on your laws of jurisdiction. Why would it be so easy, quote unquote, and I use that word very carefully, to have that conversation for Kenyans in Moscow, in Russia, in Ukraine, but not the same thing on this other side, whereby even if it's lack of knowledge, very clearly tell us where these individuals are so that we can do something about it. Why wouldn't we see the same action?
You know, what is the name of this cabinet secretary in charge of labor? Is it Alfred Mutua?
Yes.
Yeah, they're the ones who have been promising Kenyans jobs abroad. So they are complicit in the rendition of these Kenyans who could have gone to Ukraine or Russia for purposes of securing employment, but they were beguiled. So maybe that's the reason why they're prioritizing their return back home, which is a good exercise. They have to prioritize their return back home. But they must also give emphasis to this key issue that we're talking about. And, you know, friends, today I'm in a very foul mood.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah, I mean, it's not good. Because, you see, we come here, and why do we come to speak here? There are those who think that we're just like any other person wasting time. Look, you have work to do. I have work to do. But I've come here to make a cry on behalf of the families of Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyoo. Their relatives have reached out to me. There are very few people who will want to come and speak about it because they're asking stupid questions. That what is Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyoo doing in Uganda? That is a stupid question. These are Kenyan citizens. They are East African citizens. And today I've seen on the handle of this stupid character, the senator of Kericho, Cherargei, saying that we need to exercise Nandi. That we need to exercise restraint. We should not go to Tanzania and Uganda because they're having their elections. I mean, who says that? And this is a senator. And if you're to interrogate his pronouncement seriously, they seem to represent the mindset of those in the executive. So however quiet they remain, we know this is what they are thinking. But that thinking is wrong. You understand? It's now incumbent upon the people of Kenya to do the right thing. Of course, the government of the Republic of Kenya cannot take remedial action against the Ugandan ambassador here in Nairobi because they are complicit. But as I've always said, the government of the Republic of Kenya exercises delegate sovereign power. So we need to go and protest at the Ugandan embassy. And I believe there's a procession right now headed there. Let the people of Uganda, let the government of Uganda realize that this is not a joking matter. This is a serious enterprise. The liberties of Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyoo are matters of great concern. And it cannot be left to prevail in this state any longer than it has up to now. They must release these people.
Well, Kelly, allow me to take a step back and draw from what I've been trained. When I was doing investigative stories, I was always trained, listen to what somebody is not saying in what they're saying.
Yes.
And also, when I'm questioning and there's silence from the other end, that silence is saying something. Could we be looking at the wrong person, talking to the wrong person in this instance? And this is what I mean. So Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyoo are in Uganda. The invitation, like you said, of Bobby Wine. And like you earlier said, the previous case, these are fellows who are insignificant. I at least I knew Bob Njagi from the Kitengela 3. I didn't know him before then, to be honest. Nicholas Oyoo, not so many of us knew who he was until this case and incident was reported. So we'd assume if these are operatives, if these are criminals, whatever it is that they were doing in Uganda with Bobby Wine, you'd assume it will take a legal direction that these people are arrested for ABCD.
Yes.
But it's not the case. Since October 1st, they're in Uganda. Well, we assume they're still in Uganda at this particular moment. And I'm looking at these two countries, and like you said, there's an unholy trinity of Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, of a dictatorial style of leadership and doing things. And I'm wondering, we are telling Uganda to release these two, but could it be they're holding brief for Kenya? And these are two citizens who are prominent in this case, and this thing has been going on for nearly now a month. They're in Uganda, and we are demanding for their release, and they're not saying anything. The police spokesman in Uganda was the first one to issue an official statement by saying that they're not aware that these two are held in any police station. There are no police records, and he actually said they don't even know their whereabouts. That was the first time. This thing has escalated to a level where the matter now has gone to court, and it appears nobody is saying where these people are. Is Uganda, in this case, because you're a lawyer, I'm just trying to have a different train of thought, could they be holding brief for someone or for some people? Keep these people there. No matter how much noise our own people make here, just keep these two fellows there, either to teach them a lesson or whatever it is. Just keep them there, because I'm trying to think in the political calculations of Yoweri Museveni, or trying to establish motive. Why would you hold these two for this long? Allow all this noise around. Families are in distress because saying they've reached out to you. Why allow all this to go on? If there is no, if there's no one behind the scenes who's saying, keep this thing going. I'm just wondering.
Denise, your wonder is not without justification. We have a very good constitution, a near functional judiciary, save for a few rotten eggs. Because when it comes to matters, fundamental rights and freedoms, I can tell you without any fear of contradiction, you will go to the Constitutional Court in Kenya and you'll get reprieve. You'll get reprieve not because the judge is determined to uphold the Constitution, but because we have oversight of the judicial process. The day we appeared before before Lawrence Mugambi, and demanded that he orders Masengeli to come to court, it was in public. You saw it. All cameras were there.
Yep.
We were in court, myself, Nelson Havi, Eric Theuri, Madam Faith Odhiambo, the current president, and President Eric Mutua. I mean, it was improbable that the judge would order otherwise. But you can't see that in Uganda. So borrowing from that is easy to understand why Uganda will be holding brief for Kenya. But I still cannot comprehend how Nicholas Oyoo, Bob Njagi are Kenyan citizens. But they are so insignificant in claims of commission of crimes, in claims of participation in terrorism activities, that it cannot be understood why this has to be done to them. But I have a theory. Let us make two Kenyans disappear so that other Kenyans are afraid, so that other Kenyans do not speak, so that other Kenyans fear, so that we can perpetuate a culture of impunity in Kenya as it's being done in Uganda and Tanzania. That is the theory. Because what has happened in Uganda, acting in cohorts with Kenya, secured the abduction and rendition of Dr. Kiza Bizije from Nairobi to Kampala. And he's been detained up to now. We've seen the spectacle in court. It's a big joke. The judge handling the matter is acting in the most ridiculous manner that can ever be displayed by a judge. But fear has been infested in the people of Uganda. Understand? Look at Tanzania. Tundu Lissu has been detained. We've seen the spectacle in the courts in Tanzania. It's worse than the kangaroo, the colonial courts. It's worse. But fear has been instilled in the people of Tanzania. The despots in Kenya, if I was to use Miguna's categorization, no, they cannot perpetuate the same level of impunity here. We will go to court. We'll go to the detention facility and release these people if at all they're being held there. So they are borrowing bad examples from these two neighboring countries, and in particular Uganda for this case, to instill fear. But fear must propel us to do things. We can either take flight or fight. I think Kenyans are known for fighting out of fear. So we must fight this thing.
And it appears there's a line of conversation, because when Boniface Mwangi in Tanzania, together with the other activists, yes, and I remember President Samia Suluhu made a statement, and there was to unpack that statement, there was a lot in what she said in that brief moment. That in Swahili, but I can't remember correctly in Swahili, but to just summarize in English what she was trying to say, these people cannot come to our country kwa sababu wamedhibitiwa nchini mwao, wamekosa kudhibitiwa, something like that. They follow whatever is happening within the region. And so they were following the protests in Kenya. And clearly they saw how the protesters were being dealt with by their own government. And so you cannot then export your behavior to our country and expect it's business as usual. And I remember Musalia Mudavadi, in an interview, was asked the same thing in terms of intervention. And he said, sometimes we also export our bad behavior. To just quote him directly. So it means there is a conversation at that high level that we may not be aware of, that, look, these are people from Kenya who've gone to a different country to stand with an opponent or an opposition leader against a sitting president. And we know the situation in Uganda. We currently know the situation in Tanzania. And so if there are abductions happening in Kenya, we might as well do the same thing to their own people in our own country. So why not? They're being emboldened by the activities within our own country. And like you said, it could be sending a message that, look, let this be a lesson to anyone who thinks you can cross the borders in support of a politician. We saw what happened when former Chief Justice Emeritus went to support Tundu Lissu. And we saw what happened to Martha Karua. We saw what happened to yes, and we saw what happened to former Chief Justice William Mutunga. So it's very clear that it doesn't matter who you are, whether you are former Chief Justice or not. This is how we're going to deal with you.
Yeah, and I remember in particular the incidents in Tanzania relating to Boniface Mwangi, Martha Karua, and Dr. William Mutunga. The reaction from the two speakers of Parliament, the National Assembly and the Senate, was that don't go and misbehave to our friendly neighbors. And disappointingly, these pronouncements come from lawyers. The purported diplomat, Musalia Mudavadi, as you've rightfully quoted, took cue. But when all is said and done, I'll still emphasize one thing. These people are predisposed to acting in this manner. Their only discomfort is that they know the political space, the constitutional environment, the judicial system in Kenya cannot allow them to do this. But now that they have done it, we must not manifest any measure of handicapness. We know what we always do best as the people of Kenya. The protests must be undertaken against the Embassy of Uganda in Kenya and against the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. You get it? Over and above any legal intervention that can be taken, because it's a matter of extreme urgency. We are now the 21st day. The more we lose time, the greater the danger that Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyoo are exposed to. And I want to make a call. Who is the member of National Assembly that represents Bob Njagi? Who is the member of National Assembly that represents Nicholas Oyoo? Who is the senator that represents Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyoo? We want to know who you are. What have you done in Parliament? You understand? It's your responsibility to speak on behalf of these two. Summon the Attorney General, summon the Cabinet Secretary in charge of Foreign Affairs to the National Assembly and explain to us why the government of the Republic of Kenya is not taking action to secure the return of Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyoo.
And you see, Wakili, as well, maybe the president should equally speak, because the president is the president for the 55 million people of Kenya, those who voted and those who did not vote for him. But as we just paint a picture of what exactly is happening in the region, you remember Kizza Besigye, who was abducted in Kenya, taken back to Uganda, and how that has played in court. We go to Boniface Njagi, Agatha, Martha Karua, Willy Mutunga, Tanzania. Then you come to Tundu Lissu's colleague just the other day, as he was trying to come to the country to go to bury former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, and how that played at the Isibania border. And citizens, both Kenyans and Tanzanians, went to that border post and protested to a point that they had to release that gentleman. Now today we're talking about Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyoo in Uganda, and you look at a trail, a certain trajectory that is taking place in the region, and one would ask the question, why would we purport to be East Africans if the laws that protect us, the laws that enable us to have that unified passport is not doing anything? How do we as citizens stand up to a government that is hell-bent in silencing people and ensure that the law is actually followed?
East African community made sense when Yoweri Museveni was not president of Uganda. And that is the reason why Raila Amolo Odinga found a safe haven in Uganda as a transit route to a place of comfort. East African community was East African community when Samia Suluhu was not the president of Tanzania. That is why many people found safe exit through Tanzania. Miguna exited through Tanzania. Professor Makau Mutua exited through Tanzania, amongst many other people. Now, the East African community has permitted despots to ascend into public office. Look at Tanzania, for instance. Tanzania has had the best presidents, despite being a socialist country for a long period of time. The best presidents. The interval of Magufuli and his deputy president, Samia Suluhu, was a big mistake in Tanzania. Yoweri Kaguta Museveni is a big mistake in Uganda. But, people always ask me, Havi, why are you championing for Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyoo? What did they go to do in Uganda? Let me tell you what they went to do in Uganda. Uganda is helpless. The people of Uganda are helpless. That is why Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere sent troops to liberate them. You understand? Uganda are desperate. They are helpless. That is why we domiciled Yoweri Kaguta Museveni here for a long period of time, and many refugees from Uganda, to enable them wage a war to bring back democracy. But they did bring back democracy. They brought dictatorship. It is in our best interests, the people of East African community, that we have a democratic space in the three countries, in Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. It's imperative. Because if it cannot be done, then we'll be subjugated. We've never been subjugated before in the manner that these three heads of state have done. So it makes you feel the absence of identity or association to the wider East African community society. You don't want to be associated with it. I can tell you without any fear of contradiction, I'm not traveling to Uganda until Yoweri Museveni is dead. I'm not traveling to Tanzania until Samia Suluhu is either dead or out of office. It's as simple as that. Because I'm not sure of my safety in that country. I'm sure of my safety in this country, despite the atrocities we may experience, because I know there is a functional constitution. I know there's a functional judicial system. I know there is a vocal people in Kenya, you understand, who will demand to know the whereabouts of Havi. You understand? In Uganda, in Tanzania, you are detained, you are abducted, you are being tortured. And in fact, in Uganda, the CDF, the son of the president, does this on Twitter. He publishes images and videos of people he's torturing. You get it? We need to liberate Uganda. We need to liberate Tanzania. It's as simple as that. Otherwise, we'll be suffocated in perpetuity.
What would you make of the IALA members of parliament? They seem to be equally just to be silent, yet they are there to represent different countries, and this would have been a matter that they have picked. Are they even in?
Who are our representatives in IALA?
Oh, well,
perhaps you
let's
remind
see.
me. My memory is fading me.
We have Hassan Sarai,
And there's also Shakil Shabir as well.
Oh, Shabal.
Shabal. Yes, Shabal is it. And there's one other. Winnie Odinga. Right.
I don't think...
And
I can only refer to
Musyoka.
him, Musyoka's
son, yes.
Now, see, that's where we make the mistake. What is the capacity of these individuals you've mentioned to speak about anything? Zero. Zero. How did they ascend there? You know, the other day we were talking about the concept of parasites and warriors. These are just parasites. They've been transported to a temporary host at Iyala. They're incapable of representing our interests. So I don't think we need to lament so much about it, because we know how they ended up there. These offices are no longer functional. They are no longer representative. They're just tokens donated to a few individuals. I mean, you've depicted the picture quite appropriately.
Wakeli, let's paint a picture of these two scenarios. So one, because the two things will, one of these two things will definitely be the outcome. Either they will be released, and the release meaning that either it will be official, or they will be dumped somewhere at a border point and then make their way to Nairobi, because we've seen that precedence. Or two, and this is very, very unfortunate, and I shudder to even think of this happening, because being Uganda, you can't rule out that possibility, because you've had people disappear, you've had people killed. And I'm just trying to think, if they are then released, they will obviously live to tell the story of what happened. And I'm just trying to figure out to what end, in terms of if it's political mind games, if it is suppression, whatever motive whoever is behind this is pursuing. The story will obviously be out, because they will say, like when they were held in Communicado, when they were abducted, they narrated what happened to them, who held them, what they saw, what they ate, or how they didn't eat. They narrated the whole story, and the whole country watched and listened to their whole ordeal. So they will obviously say who was holding them, or where, or what they were going through. And in the worst case scenario, if they don't live to tell their story, what are we looking at here? Because it's either of those two that will happen. What are we looking at here?
Denise, all those three possibilities you've enumerated are probable. And I cry for Nicholas Oyoo's mother. You've seen the old lady.
Yes.
I cry for Bob Njagi's father. I cry for myself. And I want the people of Kenya to realize the reason why I come here, myself, Nelson Havi, is because I do not want these things done to anybody else. You understand? There are those with the ignorance of comfort who feel that it's beyond them. It's not on them. But some of us have dedicated our lives to doing better, leaving this world better than we found it. And we'll do it at whatever cost. So, irrespective of which of those three scenarios being the case, Kenyans must take determinate action on this issue. We must sever ties with Uganda. That is non-negotiable. We must sever ties with Uganda. Because membership to the East African community, integration of the passports must mean something. If it doesn't mean anything, then we don't need it. You get it? We must take decisive action against the government of the Republic of Kenya. The cabinet secretary in charge of foreign affairs must be held to account, irrespective of the three outcomes. Musalia Mudavadi must leave office. He must leave office. And how must he leave office? The people of Kenya should protest. The people of Kenya should demand of their elected leaders in the National Assembly and Senate to censure Musalia Mudavadi. You get it? At the higher level, action must be taken against President William Samoei Ruto. It must be taken, irrespective of what is the three options you've enumerated. Because if this is not done, they will do it to everybody. They will do it to anybody. You understand? They are testing the patience of the people of Kenya.
And I guess this was what I wanted to ask, because in the spirit of community, and why we have regional bodies was then to be able to sort out things along certain lines in smaller groups before you then get to the larger area. And if there's camaraderie between countries, the East Africa community was founded on certain tenets, right? And so in the event that any one of your citizens may have misbehaved according to the law in another country, there is that, number one, state sovereignty which exists. Number two, there's already a pre-agreed treaty pact that says, all right, let us know what's going on so that we can deal. But this seems to be an abrogation completely of any kind of agreement that would have happened, number one. Number two, it then opens the door, because this can happen to anybody. And I am almost certain that Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyoo, if allowed to continue in this manner, will not be the last who will get into a situation like this. It goes unsaid that there is cause for concern about the manner in which these things are being handled. Are we serious then about this community that we speak of? Or have we bastardized the thing to the point whereby anything goes and nobody's being held accountable for anything?
No, these demands we are making, they're not suggestions, they're not privileges. These are rights, they're fundamental rights and freedoms. They adhere to us as the people of East African community. But even as we demand the exercise of these rights, the performance of the duties of the Republic of Kenya and Republic of Uganda, we are cognizant of one fact. The East African community is a community of countries governed by the rule of law. If Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyoo have committed a crime in Kenya or Uganda, present them before a court of law. We are not defending the commission of crime. We are not defending terrorism. We are saying present them before a court of law. We cannot act like Idi Amini, and for fear of being seen being repetitious, Idi Amini said he does not know where the Chief Justice of Uganda is. To the entire world. Idi Amini told the Law Society of Uganda he does not know where the Chief Justice of Uganda is.
It's
Yoweri Museveni is telling us he does not know where Bob Njagi is. He does not know where Nicholas Oyoo. And that's not means what? This is Yoweri Museveni telling us. No different from what Idi Amini said. We cannot allow that to go on.
So Nelson, there's the abrogation of rights, where you do things that are directly blocking those rights from being lived out or exercised. Can we also say that denying certain things also is an abrogation of those rights? And this is in line with what the human rights envoy, and also from the US,
Yes.
which was reported yesterday, has basically told Kenya and said, you know what? Essentially, get your house in order. Why? We can look at regional bodies, but we can also look at global bodies, whereby Kenya is a signatory to the Universal Declaration on Human Rights.
Yes, it is.
And not just a member, but has ratified the treaty that put that declaration into existence. So you're signatory to it. That means that everything in the declaration you will live by and or practice. Now, I can come and hit you and you can say that I have been violent, right? But then I can also deny you a certain thing and I can be just as violent. Would we see that in this case, denying those freedoms, denying a court process, denying all of those things is an abrogation of rights that these two gentlemen are currently facing?
You're right, Ndu. In fact, the Kenyan constitution is quite clear. A denial of a right, a denial of a freedom. There is a reason why you're given a passport. The passport is intended to protect you as a Kenyan. The passport is intended to protect you as a Kenyan citizen. You are entitled to certain rights. One right is exit and entry. Right to life. Okay? Freedom from servitude. So to the extent that the Kenyan government, having issued Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyoo with an East African passport, has failed to secure their release, has failed to investigate their whereabouts, has failed to inquire from the government of Uganda to do the right thing. There has been a denial of the fundamental rights of Bob Oyoo and Nicholas Oyoo. There has been a denial of the fundamental rights of Kenyans because these two are representatives of the people of Kenya. These two are representatives of the citizens of the East African community.
Wakili, let's look at the immigration process. So the passport, there is an exit stamp and an entry stamp towards Uganda, but there is nothing else after that.
Yes.
And with further information, we know the holding center where these two are being held based
Mbuya,
off
yes,
in
Mbuya.
Mbuya, based off information that we have. And one would have hoped that it is easy to go to this Mbuya, do your soup and find out if that's the case. That would have even been a court order that comes from Uganda. But this is where we find ourselves. And one would say, dialogue. Is there a need of dialogue or just follow the law?
We need to follow the law, but we also need to dialogue. But before I get into the discourse, Mbuya is the equivalent of the National Crimes Research Bureau that was operated by dictator Idi Amin. They had a license to come and seize anybody, a general, a chief justice, a minister. That's what they did. So Yoweri Kaguta Museveni just replicated that model at Mbuya. And his son, General Muhoozi, is just a replica of Idi Amin. So we need them to follow the law. But we're mindful of the difficulties, the lengthy time that following the law may entail. That is why we've said we want the cabinet secretary in charge of foreign affairs in Kenya to pick the phone and call his counterpart in Kampala. That is why we want President William Samoei Ruto to pick his phone and call his counterpart in Kampala and ask him, Sebo, could you release these two boys? It's not a big deal. You understand? We will follow the due process, but we'll be grateful if Musalia Mudavadi and William Samoei Ruto ameliorated the plight of these two and the plight of Kenya by doing the right thing. You understand? Let them do the right thing.
I guess, in line with that, what I understand in terms of diplomacy, when a citizen of another country is held, what will then happen is the Foreign Affairs Ministry will obviously be notified that we are holding a citizen for ABC reasons, and the Kenyan consular then protection norms, they will be aware that their citizens are being held in this country. And in this case, it's clear Kenya knows that Njagi and Nicholas Oyoo are in Uganda and being held in Uganda. My question is, and this is my last question very quickly, we used to have international pressure on matters like this. We don't hear AU addressing itself on this matter. Sure. We don't have anything to do with the East Africa. Well, we talk about the East Africa spirit, and but it doesn't really. It could be there, but because you have the people, top leadership who are ensuring that it's not there. Where is the international voice? Where is the regional other bodies' voices when it comes to these matters? Because they are obviously monitoring and seeing what's happening in Kenya, what's happening in Uganda, what's happening in Tanzania, and especially ahead of elections.
That is, we live in a generation of failed leadership, not in Kenya, not in the East African community, not in Africa, everywhere, global. On an earlier date, the United Nations will have said something like this.
Yes.
On an earlier date, the great Baroness Linda Shocker will have said something like this. On an earlier date, Chief Ameka Nyauku will have said something about this. You understand? On an earlier date, Nyerere will have said something about this. General Arap Moi will have said something about it. But we don't have that. And because we are nearing the end of this discourse, why don't we have that? Because, we have imbeciles in office everywhere. We have scoundrels in office everywhere. We have bad people in office everywhere. Uganda is going to an election. Tanzania is going to an election. We'll soon be going to an election. This is a call to the people of Kenya. The importance of good leaders is now clear to you than ever before. Good leaders. Your MCA, your member of National Assembly, your woman rep, your senator, your governor, your deputy president, your president must be people that can heed your call. Must be people that can speak for you. Must be people that can go out to defend you, Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyoo. Do we have those people? We don't have those people. We need those people. Are they in our midst? They are there. You need those people in office, from president to MCA. Make no mistake about it.
And that's what we need. It's a cliffhanger that we end on today because we're not sure what's going to happen in the next coming days. We don't know. But there's a call in terms of what's very clear, what must be done, and as well what the situation currently is. It's our hope that they're safe. It's our hope that somebody will move for them to come home. And overall, it's our hope that we will do the right thing or get people who will. Nelson Havi, thank you for being here with us this morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.